My daughter had been crying so hard she could barely breathe when she finally told me what my mother had done. I found Angie sitting on the floor beside her bed, her knees pulled against her chest, staring at an empty wooden box. That box had been sitting on her dresser for almost 2 years. She had painted tiny green leaves around the edges because the money inside was supposed to pay for her school's environmental science trip to Costa Rica. Every birthday bill from relatives went into it. Every dollar she earned babysitting our neighbor's twins. Half of what she made working Saturdays at the local garden center. Even the money she received for helping one of my coworkers' middle school kids with biology. Angie was 15, and she had saved $2,840 on her own. She needed $2,600 for the trip. For 2 years, I had watched her count that money at the kitchen table. For 2 years, I had listened to her talk about cloud forests, sea turtles, field sampling, and how she wanted to see a real tropical ecosystem instead of just reading about one. And now the box was empty. Angie? She looked up. Her face was red and soaked with tears. Grandma took it. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood. What? She took my money. I crouched beside her. All of it? Angie nodded. She came over while you were at work. She said she needed to borrow something from your room. I was downstairs doing homework. My mother had a spare key. I had given it to her years ago for emergencies. Apparently, in her mind, emergency had developed a very flexible definition. Angie wiped her face with her sleeve. I heard her upstairs. Then she came down carrying my box. I felt something cold move through my chest. What did she say? Angie swallowed. I asked where she was taking it. Her voice cracked. She said John's 18th birthday was coming up and Uncle Jason didn't have enough money to make it special. John was my nephew, my brother Jason's son. A genuinely good kid, for the record. None of what happened was his fault. What exactly did Grandma say? Angie stared at the carpet. Then she whispered it. She said, your cousin only turns 18 once. You can go on another little school trip someday. My hands curled into fists. And then? I told her I earned that money. Angie started crying again. She said I was being selfish. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. That was my mother's favorite word whenever somebody tried to keep something she wanted. Selfish. Not hers. Selfish. Your money? Selfish. Your time? Selfish. Your house? Your car? Your vacation days? If my mother, Diane Reed, wanted access to any of them, suddenly ownership became a moral failure. Angie continued. I told her I'd been saving for 2 years. Then came the sentence that changed everything. She said, John matters more right now. I looked at my daughter. Something inside me became completely still. For most of my adult life, I had mistaken endurance for kindness. I had thought keeping the peace made me mature. I had thought swallowing resentment made me a good daughter. But there are certain things you can tolerate when somebody does them to you that become impossible to tolerate when you watch them do the same thing to your child. I wiped Angie's tears with my thumbs. Then I smiled. Not because anything was funny, because I had finally made a decision. You know what? I said softly. Grandma's right. Angie stared at me like I had slapped her. Mom? John's birthday matters more. Her face crumpled. I kissed her forehead. So much more that Grandma can pay for every damn cent of it herself. I stood up, walked into the hallway, and pulled out my phone. 3 weeks earlier, I had secretly booked an upscale event space called the Glass House for John's 18th birthday. My mother had begged me to handle it. Jason was struggling financially after a slow year at his contracting business, and Mom wanted John's birthday to be something the family would remember forever. Private room, catering, DJ, photo booth, custom decorations. The total package came to just under $10,000. I had already put down a deposit. Nobody except my mother knew I was behind it. John thought his grandmother had somehow arranged everything. Mom had promised she would contribute later. I should have known what that meant. I called the venue. Hi, I said. This is Samantha Reed. I need to cancel the Reed birthday reservation. The coordinator pulled up the booking. Are you sure? Your event is in 3 weeks. Completely sure. There will be a cancellation fee. That's fine. I looked at Angie's empty wooden box. Cancel everything. When I hung up, I made one more call. This one was overdue by about 6 months. My Aunt Laura answered on the third ring, my mother's older sister. Retired accountant, painfully organized, suspicious by nature, and, according to Mom, a bitter woman who keeps records because she has no life. 6 months earlier, Aunt Laura had tried to warn me. She told me money was disappearing throughout our family. Small amounts, large amounts, loans that nobody remembered agreeing to. Checks written from accounts people had forgotten existed. Cash gifts that somehow passed through Mom before reaching their intended recipients. At the time, I had defended my mother. Actually, worse. I had told Laura she was imagining things. Now I stood in my daughter's bedroom and listened to the phone ring. "Sam?" Laura answered. "I owe you an apology." There was a pause. "That sounds serious." "My mother stole $2,840 from Angie." Another pause, and Laura said quietly, "So she finally did it where you couldn't explain it away." My arms tightened. "How much do you know?" Laura exhaled. "Enough." "How much is enough?" "Enough that you should probably sit down. I'm Samantha Reed. I was 39 when this happened, and I worked as a biologist at a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant outside Columbus. Most people hear biologist and imagine me wandering through forests collecting plants. My actual work was much less picturesque. I supervised environmental monitoring and contamination control testing in a facility that manufactured sterile injectable medications. My days involved microbial samples, clean room protocols, validation reports, deviations, corrective actions, and enough documentation to bury a small building. I liked it. There was something comforting about a world where facts mattered. If a sample was contaminated, you couldn't guilt it into becoming clean. If a process failed, you couldn't yell at the data until it apologized. You found the source, you documented it, you fixed the problem. My family operated according to the opposite philosophy, especially my mother. Mom had always been obsessed with the idea that family resources belonged to whoever she decided needed them most. When Jason and I were teenagers, that usually meant Jason. If I saved birthday money for something, Mom would occasionally borrow it because Jason needed football equipment. When I got my first summer job at 17, I came home one afternoon and discovered $300 missing from the envelope in my desk. Mom had used it to help Jason pay for repairs after he damaged Dad's car. "You're better with money," she told me. Apparently, being responsible was punishable by confiscation. Jason wasn't malicious. That was part of what made the whole dynamic so difficult. He loved me. I loved him. But he had grown up believing rescues simply appeared whenever life became uncomfortable, usually because I helped finance them. When Jason and his wife divorced, I paid $4,000 toward his attorney because Mom called me every night saying he was falling apart. When his heating system died one winter, I covered the replacement. When John needed braces, I paid what insurance didn't. When Mom needed a new roof, I contributed $7,500. When she wrecked her car and complained about the insurance deductible, I covered that too. Individually, every request sounded reasonable. That was the genius of it. Nobody ever said, "Samantha, please allow us to financially exploit you for 15 years. They said, "It's only this once. You're doing better than Jason. You know Mom's on a fixed income. John shouldn't suffer because his parents are struggling. Family takes care of family." And because I had a good salary, because I didn't carry much debt, because I had been raised to believe that having more created an obligation to surrender more, I kept writing checks. Then Angie started noticing. That embarrassed me more than anything. One Christmas, when she was 12, she watched Mom open a $900 television I had bought her. Mom smiled and said, "Finally, my old one was impossible. Not thank you, finally." On the drive home, Angie stared out the passenger window. Then she said, "Grandma doesn't say thank you to you very much." I laughed. "She does." Angie looked at me. "No, she doesn't." Kids notice what adults learn to rationalize. Another time, Mom called during dinner because Jason needed help paying John's summer sports fees. I said I would think about it. Mom became irritated. "What's there to think about? You have the money." Angie was sitting across from me. She stopped eating. I lowered my voice. "Having money doesn't mean everyone is entitled to it." Mom laughed. "Samantha, don't start acting greedy." After I hung up, Angie asked, "Why does Grandma always call you greedy when you don't immediately give her something?" I didn't have an answer. Or rather, I had one. I just wasn't ready to admit it. The school trip became Angie's project around that same time. Her science teacher announced that students entering sophomore year could apply for a summer ecology program in Costa Rica. There were field stations, rainforest hikes, wildlife surveys, conservation workshops, and 2 days working with a sea turtle monitoring group. Angie came home carrying the brochure like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Mom, look." I looked. Then I looked at the price. $2,600? Her excitement dimmed immediately. I know. I could have paid it. That matters. I had the money. But Angie didn't ask me to. Instead, she said, What if I save for it? So we made a deal. I would cover her passport, equipment, vaccinations, and spending money. She would save toward the program fee. Not because I believed children should finance educational opportunities themselves, but because she wanted to prove she could. It became important to her. She babysat, worked at the garden center, tutored, skipped buying expensive shoes her friends had, asked relatives for trip contributions instead of birthday presents. She taped a chart to the side of that wooden box. Every $100 earned another green stripe. I watched her slowly color the page for almost 2 years. The day she passed $2,600, she ran into the kitchen screaming, "I did it!" I hugged her so hard she complained she couldn't breathe. She kept saving anyway. "I want a buffer," she told me seriously. My little scientist, always accounting for uncertainty. The payment deadline was 11 days away when my mother emptied the box. And the cruelest part? Mom knew exactly what the money was for. She had watched Angie save it. She had given her $50 the previous Christmas specifically for Costa Rica, which apparently meant nothing once Mom saw a more important use for it, John's birthday. The birthday I was already secretly funding. That night, after Angie went to bed, Aunt Laura came over carrying a laptop and a thick accordion folder. I made coffee. She spread documents across my dining table. "What is all this?" "Your mother." That answer should have sounded ridiculous. It didn't. Laura turned the laptop toward me. "I started paying attention after your father died. Dad had passed 4 years earlier after a stroke. He had never been good with family conflict. Mom made decisions, Dad sighed and went along. I loved him, but pretending otherwise would have been dishonest. He left several small accounts," Laura continued. "Nothing enormous. Some savings, 2 certificates of deposit, the education accounts for the grandchildren, a few investment holdings. I know. No, you know what Diane told you existed." I looked at her. "What does that mean?" Laura opened a spreadsheet. Rows, dates, amounts, transfers, notes, color coding. Of course, Aunt Laura had color coding. "Your father asked me to help organize everything about a year before he died. I had copies of statements." She pointed to one line. "This account had $41,000. I thought it had 26. It did by the time your mother showed you." My eyes started blinking on their own. Where did $15,000 go? Laura clicked another tab. That's what I started wondering. Money had moved everywhere. Some of it went toward legitimate household expenses. Some went to Jason. Some went to Mom. Some appeared to reimburse purchases nobody could identify. Then Laura showed me a withdrawal from an account Dad had intended to help fund his grandchildren's education. $8,000. What was that? According to Diane, emergency home repairs. Did she have emergency repairs? No. Laura pulled out a photograph. My mother standing beside a brand new kitchen island, smiling at the camera. "The remodel," I whispered. Laura nodded. Another $4,500 had disappeared 3 months later. Another $2,000 after that. I felt sick. Does Jason know? I don't think so. What else? Laura hesitated. That scared me. Laura. She opened another file. Over the previous 3 years, Mom had repeatedly asked relatives to give her money for shared expenses, then inflated the actual amounts. A cousin had sent Mom $1,200 for our grandmother's memorial stone. The stone cost $720. Mom kept the difference. An uncle had sent $900 toward a family reunion rental. The rental had already been paid by someone else. Mom kept that too. She had borrowed money from Jason while simultaneously telling me Jason needed money. She had told Jason I needed help paying for Angie's dental work. I had never asked for help. Jason had given Mom $600 for Samantha. I never saw a cent. I stared at Lyra. She used me to steal from Jason? Sometimes. And him to steal from me? Yes. My coffee went cold in front of me. How long have you known? I suspected for years. I started documenting after your father died. Why didn't you do something? Laura gave me a tired look. I tried. I remembered the warnings, the uncomfortable conversations, the way Mom immediately attacked Laura's character whenever money came up. She's jealous. She hates that Dad trusted me. She's obsessed with finances. She thinks everyone is a criminal. And I believed my mother because believing Laura meant admitting something much uglier. Laura closed the laptop. Samantha, your mother doesn't think of it as stealing. That doesn't make it better. I know. What does she think it is? Management. I laughed once. There was no humor in it. Laura continued. She thinks she has the right to decide who needs what. She takes $10 here, 1,000 there, because in her head, it all belongs to the family anyway. Angie is 15. I know. She stole from a 15-year-old. I know. 2 years of that kid's work. Laura reached across the table and touched my hand. That's why I think you finally called me. She was right. If Mom had taken $2,840 from me, I might still have found some insane way to rationalize it. But she hadn't. She had walked into my daughter's room, picked up a box covered in hand-painted leaves, looked at a savings chart filled in by a kid over 2 years, and taken everything, then told her someone else mattered more. There are moments when an entire relationship changes shape. That was mine. I opened my banking app. Laura watched me. What are you doing? Making a list. A list of what? Everything I pay for. Mom's phone plan? Canceled. The automatic monthly transfer I had been sending her? Canceled. The supplemental insurance bill I covered? Removed from autopay. Her warehouse club membership? Canceled. The streaming services linked to my account? Gone. Then I emailed the venue coordinator asking for written confirmation that John's birthday event had been canceled. Finally, I changed the locks on my house the next morning. Mom called at 10:17. I was at work in a clean room review meeting when my phone started vibrating repeatedly. Mom, Mom, Jason, Mom, Mom. I ignored all of them until lunch. There were 11 missed calls. The first voicemail began with, "Samantha, there seems to be some confusion with the venue." Confusion. I almost laughed. The second, "They're saying you canceled John's party. Call me immediately." The third dropped the polite tone. "You had no right to do this without discussing it with me." That one was almost impressive. I had no right to cancel the party I was paying for, but she had the right to take $2,840 from a child's bedroom. I called her from my car. She answered immediately. "What the hell is wrong with you?" No hello. I stared through my windshield at the pharmaceutical plant across the parking lot. "What happened to Angie's money?" Silence. Then, "Oh, for God's sake." There it was. Not denial. Annoyance. "Where is it?" I already told her. Jason is under financial pressure, and John deserves a proper 18th birthday. I was already paying for his proper 18th birthday. "Well, there are other expenses." "So you stole from Angie." "I did not steal. She earned it. She is 15. Mom shouted that as if Angie's age somehow erased ownership. "She lives under your roof. Everything she has comes from you anyway." "No, that money came from 2 years of work." "Babysitting is not work. She earned it." "Stop being dramatic." I laughed. "You walked into my house while I was gone, entered my daughter's bedroom, and took almost $3,000. I borrowed it. When were you planning to return it?" Another silence. I already had my answer. Mom changed tactics. "You're really going to ruin your nephew's birthday over money?" "No." "Then call the venue back." "I'm not ruining anything." "You canceled his party." "You did." "I didn't cancel anything. You chose to finance his birthday with stolen money. So now you get to finance his birthday without me." Her voice went cold. "You are unbelievable. And you're no longer allowed inside my house." "What?" "I changed the locks." "You changed the locks because I borrowed some cash?" "I changed the locks because you stole from my child." "Stop using that word." "Stealing?" "Yes." "Then stop doing it." She hung up. 10 seconds later, Jason called. I answered. "What did you do?" he demanded. "Depends what Mom told you." "She said you canceled John's venue because you two had some argument about Angie's trip." "Of course, not theft, an argument." "Did she tell you she took $2,840 from Angie's bedroom?" Silence. "She what?" "She emptied Angie's school trip savings." Another silence. Then, "Wait, the Costa Rica money?" "Yes." Jason sounded genuinely shocked. "I thought you were paying for that." "No, Angie saved for it herself." "Mom said—" He stopped. "What?" "Nothing." "What did Mom say?" He exhaled. "She told me you'd decided the trip was too expensive and Angie wasn't going." I closed my eyes. "Did she tell you where the birthday money came from?" "She said she had it covered." "With Angie's money." "Sam, I swear I didn't know." I believed him. But I wasn't letting him escape the bigger pattern. "I was paying for the venue, Jason." "What?" $10,000. "What the hell?" "She told you she was paying, didn't she?" "Yes." "She told me you were struggling and she wanted to surprise John." I agreed because I love him. Jason was quiet. Then he said, "That doesn't make sense." "No, it doesn't." I thought about Laura's spreadsheet. "Come to Mom's house Saturday." "Why?" "Because Aunt Laura has some things to show us." The second I said Laura's name, Jason groaned. Oh God. That reaction is exactly why Mom got away with this for so long. What are you talking about? Saturday, noon. Mom tried everything before Saturday. Anger, guilt, victimhood. She texted, "You are tearing this family apart." Then, "Your father would be ashamed." That one hurt, which was why she used it. Then, "John is devastated." That one turned out to be a lie. John called Angie Thursday evening. I stood in the kitchen pretending not to listen while she talked to him in the living room. "I didn't know," he told her. Angie's shoulders relaxed slightly. "You really didn't?" "No. Grandma told us she got some kind of discount and had everything handled." Then he said something that made me respect him more than I already did. "I don't want a party bought with your money." Angie started crying. Not the devastated crying from Tuesday. Different tears. Relief. John continued, "I'm serious. Forget the stupid venue. Dad can grill burgers. I don't care." After they hung up, Angie came into the kitchen. "He said he's sorry. He has nothing to apologize for." "I know." She looked at me. "Are you still mad at Uncle Jason?" "A little." "Why?" "Because adults can benefit from unhealthy family patterns without creating them." She frowned. "That sounded like something from one of your work training videos." I laughed for the first time all week. Occupational hazard. Saturday arrived. Laura and I got to Mom's house first. Mom opened the door and stared at the accordion folder in Laura's hands. Her face changed. "You." Laura smiled thinly. "Nice to see you too, Diane." "What is she doing here?" I invited her. "This is my house, and this is my money we're discussing." Mom folded her arms. "I already told you I'll replace Angie's little savings." Little savings. Nearly 2 years of my daughter's work reduced to little savings. When? When things settle down. No, today. I don't have $3,000 sitting around. Laura made a tiny sound. Mom's eyes snapped toward her. "What?" "Nothing." "Say it." Laura opened the folder. "I just think it's interesting that you don't have $3,000 when Gerald left considerably more money than that." Mom went white. "Do not bring my husband into this. He was my brother-in-law too. You always hated me." "No, Diane. I just know how spreadsheets work." The front door opened. Jason walked in with John. Mom immediately changed expression. "Thank God. Jason, please tell your sister she's lost her mind." Jason didn't answer. John stayed near the door. Mom looked at him. "Honey, Grandma is fixing your party." "I don't want the party." Her face froze. "What?" "I said I don't want it." "But you were excited." "I was excited because I thought you were doing something nice." "I am." "You took Angie's money." Mom's lips tightened. "You children don't understand adult finances." John was 18 in 9 days, but apparently when his opinion became inconvenient, he was suddenly a child. Jason sat at the dining table. "Sam said Laura has records." Mom looked at me. Betrayal burned in her eyes. "You brought him into this?" "You brought everyone into it years ago." Laura placed the first set of statements on the table. For the next 40 minutes, my mother's version of our family began collapsing. Jason learned Mom had asked me for money to cover his expenses at least 7 times when he had never requested help. I learned she had asked Jason for money supposedly intended for Angie. John learned that the education account Grandpa created for him should have contained almost $14,000 more than it currently did. That one finally broke Jason. He stared at the statement. "Where is this money?" Mom waved her hand. "Your father needed help." "No, Dad died 4 years ago. I mean before he died." Laura slid another document across. "The withdrawals happened afterward." Jason looked up. "Mom?" "It was used for family expenses." "What family expenses?" Silence. "What family expenses?" Mom's voice rose. "This house, taxes, repairs, groceries. Do you think everything is free?" "I paid for your furnace last year," Jason said. "And I paid for the roof," I added. Laura flipped a page. "And Gerald's pension covered the property taxes." Mom stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "I will not sit here and be interrogated in my own home." I stayed seated. At work, when an investigation reached the uncomfortable part, people sometimes got loud. Data didn't care. Neither did bank statements. "Then stand." Mom stared at me. "What?" "Stand if you want, but we're finishing." Her face turned red. "You ungrateful little—" No, my voice wasn't loud. That was what stopped her. For almost 40 years, Mom had depended on one thing. Eventually, I would retreat. I would soften my words. I would apologize. I would write the check. Not anymore. "You stole from my daughter," I said. "And because you did, I finally looked at everything else." "I borrowed." "No." "Family money?" "No." "You have always thought you were better than—" "No." Each time, the word became easier. I understood suddenly why she hated it so much. No was the one word that ended her authority. Jason pushed John's account statement toward her. How much did you take? Mom looked at him. Jason, after everything I have done for you, how much? I helped you after your divorce. With Samantha's money, apparently. Mom looked at me. There it was. For the first time, Jason saw it, the machinery. Mom would convince one person another relative was suffering, collect money, redirect some, keep some, then position herself as the generous savior at the center of everything. She wasn't merely taking money. She was buying influence with money that wasn't hers. John stood near the wall, looking sick. Grandma. Mom turned toward him. Her face softened. Sweetheart, none of this concerns you. You took money Grandpa left for me? It was never like that. And you took Angie's. I was trying to give you a beautiful birthday. I didn't ask you to. That sentence hit harder than anything I had said. Mom stared at him. John continued. I wanted to go bowling with my friends. I almost laughed. $10,000, catering, a DJ, custom decorations. My mother had built an entire monument to her generosity for a kid who wanted pizza and bowling. John shook his head. You always do this. Mom looked stunned. Do what? Make everything huge so everybody has to thank you. Silence. He walked out. Jason stood. John, let him go. He sat back down slowly. Mom started crying. Real tears or strategic tears, I still don't know. Maybe both. You've all decided I'm some kind of monster. Nobody answered. That seemed to upset her more. I sacrificed my entire life for this family. Laura closed the folder. So did everybody else, Diane. The difference is that you kept sending them the bill. Mom looked at me. You're enjoying this. No. And I meant it. I wasn't enjoying anything. I felt exhausted, sad, embarrassed. Mostly embarrassed. Because somewhere underneath my anger was the understanding that this hadn't happened overnight. I had helped build the system, not intentionally, but every time Mom behaved badly and I covered the financial consequences, I taught her that consequences belonged to me. That ended with Angie. I slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a simple repayment agreement prepared after I spoke with an attorney. Nothing dramatic, nothing threatening, just documentation. The amount taken from Angie, a deadline, and written acknowledgement that Mom had no permission to remove money or property from my home. Mom looked at it. You got a lawyer? I got advice. Against your own mother? To protect my daughter. Her mouth twisted. You really think your daughter is more important than your mother? I stared at her. There it was, the real question, the one underneath everything. Choose me. Prove I outrank everyone. I thought of Angie sitting beside that empty box. Yes. Mom blinked. I continued. My daughter is more important than protecting you from consequences. She looked like she had stopped breathing. You'll regret saying that. No. I stood. You relied on me regretting boundaries before I even made them. I picked up my bag. That's over. The next few months were ugly. There was no cinematic ending where Mom immediately confessed, apologized, returned everything, and became a different person. Real people are inconvenient that way. Mom insisted for weeks that Laura had manipulated us. Then she said Jason had turned against her. Then she claimed I had poisoned John. Then she told extended relatives I had humiliated a grieving widow over a misunderstanding involving pocket money. Unfortunately for her, Aunt Laura had receipts. Literally. When relatives called me angry, I stopped defending myself emotionally. I gave them facts. Did she tell you Angie earned the money? Usually, no. Did she tell you it was $2,840? Usually, no. Did she tell you she entered my house and removed it without permission? No. Did she tell you there were other missing funds? Definitely no. The outreach became quieter after that. Some people apologized, some disappeared. Both outcomes were useful. Mom repaid Angie in installments after Jason threatened to pursue the missing money from John's education account separately. I covered the Costa Rica deadline myself before the first repayment arrived. Angie protested. Mom, I wanted to pay. You did. But Grandma took it. And that doesn't erase what you accomplished. I paid the program fee. When Mom repaid the $2,840, every dollar went directly into a new savings account in Angie's name, with access limited appropriately. I showed her the balance. That's yours. She stared at the screen. So I get the trip and the savings? You earned the savings. I'm giving you the trip. That seems unfair to you. I smiled. Sometimes generosity is allowed to feel good. She hugged me, and yes, she went to Costa Rica. The morning I dropped her at the airport, she was wearing an oversized backpack and talking so quickly I understood about every third word. Field notebook? Got it. Passport? Got it. Phone charger? Mom. Emergency numbers? Mom. She wrapped her arms around me, then whispered, "Thank you for believing me." Those words nearly broke me, because there was a version of me from 5 years earlier who might have tried to negotiate, who might have told Angie Grandma meant well, who might have pressured a 15-year-old to forgive before the person who hurt her had even apologized. I hated admitting that, but growth without admitting who you used to be is just vanity. "I'll always believe you," I said. Then I corrected myself. "I'll always listen to you and take you seriously." She smiled. Very scientist answer. I laughed. "Go get on the plane." John's birthday turned out fine. Better than fine, actually. Jason rented 2 lanes at a bowling alley. They had pizza, cake from a grocery store, a bunch of teenagers yelling over arcade games. Total cost was probably less than $500. Angie went. So did I. Mom did not. She had been invited by Jason under the condition that she not discuss the financial dispute. She refused because she considered that humiliating. John didn't seem devastated. At one point, I watched him bowl what may have been the worst frame in recorded history and celebrate like he had won an Olympic medal. He came over afterward. "Aunt Sam?" "Yeah?" "I'm sorry you lost money on that venue." I didn't lose much. That wasn't completely true. There was a cancellation fee. But compared with what continuing the old family arrangement would have cost me, it was cheap. He shoved his hands into his pockets. "I never asked Grandma for any of that." "I know. I don't want you thinking I thought I mattered more than Angie." I looked at him. "You matter exactly as much as Angie." He nodded. "That's what I thought." Then he wandered back toward his friends. That conversation stayed with me, because children weren't born believing love had rankings. Adults taught them. My mother had spent decades acting as though affection was a competition, and money was the scoreboard. Jason was the favorite until he disappointed her. I was the responsible one until I refused her. John mattered more when she needed justification for taking from Angie. Angie would have mattered more the next time Mom wanted something from Jason. Nobody actually won, not even the favorite, especially not the favorite. Jason changed too, slowly, painfully. For the first time in his life, he had to examine how often someone else had absorbed the cost of rescuing him. One evening, about 4 months after everything happened, he came to my house. He brought Chinese food. We sat on the back patio. "I owe you money," he said. I looked at him. "You owe a lot of people money." "I'm serious." "So am I." He laughed awkwardly. Then his face became serious again. "I went through old records. Laura help?" "Unfortunately," I smiled. "She enjoyed that, didn't she?" "Way too much." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, not for everything, but enough to make me stare at it. "What is this?" "Part of what you paid during my divorce." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." I almost told him to keep it. That was my instinct, my old instinct, rescue, smooth things over, protect him from discomfort. Then I realized accepting repayment could also be part of changing the pattern. So I folded the check. "Thank you." Jason nodded. His eyes got watery. "I didn't know how much Mom was getting from you." "You also didn't ask." "I know." There was nothing to add. Sometimes an apology becomes meaningful only after the excuses run out. He looked toward the kitchen where Angie was studying. "She okay?" "Better. John talks about her all the time. They've always been close." "I don't want Mom wrecking that." "Then don't let her." He nodded. Simple. Not easy, but simple. Mom and I barely spoke for nearly 8 months. The first 2 months, she sent messages constantly. Some were furious, some sentimental, some included old childhood photographs, as though evidence that she had once braided my hair somehow canceled stealing from my daughter. I stopped responding unless the message involved concrete repayment arrangements. Eventually, the messages slowed. The silence hurt. I won't pretend otherwise. Boundaries are often described like they produce instant peace. Mine didn't. At first, they produced grief. I grieved the mother I wished I had, the family I thought we were, the years I spent believing that if I just gave enough, helped enough, forgave enough, eventually everyone would feel secure enough to stop taking. But people do not automatically become respectful when you become more generous. Sometimes generosity simply gives disrespect a larger budget. 6 months after the incident, I did something embarrassingly small. I bought myself a new microscope, not for work, for home. a beautiful research-grade used scope I had been eyeing for years because I wanted to do amateur microscopy photography. Every time I considered buying it before, I talked myself out of it. What if Mom had an emergency? What if Jason needed help? What if John needed something? What if somebody's furnace broke? For years, imaginary future emergencies had been spending my money before I could enjoy it. So I bought the microscope. Angie walked into my little home office while I was setting it up. "How much was that?" "None of your business." She grinned. "You bought yourself something expensive." "I did." "I'm proud of you." I laughed. "You're 15. And? You're not supposed to sound like my therapist." She leaned against the doorframe. "Grandma called me yesterday." My smile disappeared. "What did she want?" "She apologized." That surprised me. "For real?" "I don't know." Fair answer. "What did she say?" "She said she shouldn't have taken the money." That alone was more direct than anything Mom had said to me. She said she thought because you always helped everyone, I would understand. I closed my eyes. Of course. Even her apology tried to turn my generosity into permission. "What did you say?" Angie smiled slightly. "I told her understanding why somebody does something doesn't make it okay." I stared at her. "What? What? Where did you learn that?" She shrugged. "Probably one of your boring work stories." I laughed until my eyes watered. Almost a year after the day Mom emptied Angie's box, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Mom. Not long, not dramatic. She wrote that she had started meeting with a counselor. She wrote that Laura still annoyed her. That made me laugh. She wrote that Jason had stopped letting her manage anything financial. Good. Then came the sentence that mattered. I spent years confusing being needed with being loved. I read it twice, then again. Mom wrote that controlling money made her feel important, that solving everyone's problems let her stay at the center of the family, that she had convinced herself she was redistributing resources when what she was really doing was taking choices away from everyone around her. She didn't ask me to forgive her. That was how I knew, for once, the apology might actually mean something. At the bottom, she wrote, "Tell Angie I am sorry that I made her feel less important than anyone else." I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Then I showed Angie. She read it silently. "What do you think?" I asked. Angie folded the letter. "I think maybe Grandma's learning." "Maybe. Does that mean everything goes back to normal?" "No." She nodded. "Good." That surprised me. "Good?" She looked at me. Normal wasn't very good. There are moments when your child says something so obvious you wonder how adulthood managed to make you stupid. Normal wasn't very good. So we didn't go back. Mom never got another key to my house. Nobody in the family gave her money to distribute for someone else. If John needed something, Jason handled it. If Angie received money, it went directly to Angie. If Mom asked me for financial help, I required a documentation and decided without guilt. Sometimes the answer was yes. Often it was no, and the world kept turning. Angie still has the wooden box. It sits on a shelf now, empty. Not because anyone took from it, because after Costa Rica, she decided cash belonged in the bank. On the front is that old savings chart covered in green stripes. She refused to throw it away. "It reminds me I did it," she said. I know exactly what she means. The trip changed her. She came home obsessed with conservation biology and announced she wanted to study ecology. I joke that after years of listening to me complain about microbial contamination investigations, she had somehow chosen an even dirtier branch of biology. She rolled her eyes. Last month, she started applying for summer programs. She has another savings goal taped beside her desk. But this time, there's something different. She knows nobody gets to decide that what she earned matters less because somebody else wants it. And so do I. For most of my life, I believed boundaries were something you built when relationships failed. I had it backward. Boundaries are how you discover whether a relationship was ever capable of respecting you in the first place. My mother stealing $2,840 from my daughter was one of the ugliest moments our family ever experienced. But it exposed something I had spent decades refusing to see. Mom wasn't entitled to my money because she raised me. Jason wasn't entitled to rescue because I earned more. Family didn't mean surrendering ownership whenever someone shouted, "selfish." And generosity offered under pressure wasn't generosity, it was tribute. The morning Angie left for Costa Rica, she hugged me at the airport and disappeared through security with her backpack bouncing behind her. A week later, she sent me a picture. She was standing in a rainforest wearing muddy boots, holding a field notebook, smiling so widely I could almost hear her laughing through the screen. Under the photo, she wrote, 2 years, worth it. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I thought about the empty box, the canceled $10,000 party, Aunt Laura's spreadsheet, Jason's repayment check, Mom's letter, and the word I had spent nearly 40 years being afraid to say, no. Such a tiny word, 2 letters. But sometimes 2 letters are the difference between being generous and being used, between keeping a family together and keeping yourself trapped inside it, between teaching your daughter to tolerate what you tolerated and showing her that she never has to. I saved Andrew's picture as my phone background, and every time I looked at it, I remembered the night she sat crying on her bedroom floor because someone she trusted had decided her work, her dream, and her feelings mattered less. My mother had been wrong. John did not matter more. Andrew did not matter more. I did not matter more. That had been the lie underneath our family for years, that love required rankings, winners, losers, favorites, sacrifices. It didn't. Love wasn't supposed to decide who deserved to be emptied so someone else could stay full. And once I understood that, I stopped being the family bank. I became a woman with her own plans, her own money, and a front door nobody entered without permission. It made me feel free.